जय जय सुरनायक जन सुखदायक प्रणत पाल भगवंता गोद्विज हितकारी जय सुरारी सिंधु सुता प्रिय कंता पालन सुर धरनी अद्भुत करनी मरम न जानई कोई जो सहज कृपाला दीन दयाला करऊ अनुग्रह सोई करऊ अनुग्रह सोई जय जय अविनाशी सब घटवासी व्यापक परमानंदा अभिगत गोतीतम चरित पुनीतम माया रहित मुकुंदा जेहि लागी बिरागी अति अनुरागी विगत मोह मुनि वृंदा निशिवासर ध्यावहि गुण गण गावहि जयति सच्चिदानंदा जयति सच्चिदानंदा जेहि सृष्टि उपाई त्रिविध बनाई संग सहाय न दूजा सो करऊ अघारी चिंत हमारी जानिय भगति न पूजा जो भव भय भंजन मुनि मन रंजन गंजन विपति बरूथा मन बच क्रम बानी छाड़ी सयानी सरन सकल सुर जूथा सरन सकल सुर जूथा सारद श्रुति शेषा ऋषय अशेषा जा कहूँ कोई नहीं जाना जेहि दीन पियारे वेद पुकारे द्रवहु सुश्री भगवाना भव बारिधि मंदर सब विधि सुंदर गुण मंदिर सुख पुंजा मुनि सिद्ध सकल सुर परम भयातुर नमत नाथ पद कंजा नमत नाथ पद कंजा जय जय अविनाशी सब घटवासी व्यापक परमानंदा अविगत गोतीतम चरित पुनीतम माया रहित मुकुंदा जेहि लागी बिरागी अति अनुरागी विगत मोह मुनि वृंदा निशिवासर ध्यावहि गुण गण गावहि जयति सच्चिदानंदा जयति सच्चिदानंदा।
So we are making room for God. It's a very strange play that we play, that in that which already belongs to God fully, He is so loving and merciful that even in the play, He allows us to play this game of making room for Him, to empty ourselves and to make room for Him. Empty of this me, true love, true insight, true grace, true understanding is possible. The recognition of the self does not happen when we are full of ourselves, the false self. So if truly our intention is to make room for Him, not, and it's not a spiritual strategy so that I can become better by being spiritual, or my life is better because I'm spiritual. If truly the intention is to hand over our will to His will, to live this life empty of the me, then it is very rare to see one go from being full of themselves to being completely empty of themselves. Is it? To have that happen instantly is very rare when we look at the overall flow of one's life. The contradiction, of course, is that we have to be fully empty in this moment. Then when life is looked at in its entirety, then we may see that there is a process of emptying out. Don't worry. So, the point I'm making is that to go from full of ourselves to empty of ourselves, we become more and more innocent in the process, simpler in the process. So you see that about yourself, you see that about those who are truly making way, making room for God, that the intellectual variables are not seeming as interesting as they used to, and our mental conclusions are not seeming as relevant as they used to. How do you see it? If somebody is going, emptying themselves more and more, but they're sounding more and more complicated, does it seem like they're on the right track? So to return to the innocence of a child will not happen by complicating ourselves more and more. And one thing is clear, whether you look at the life of a Tulsidas ji or a Saint Teresa of Avila, any of the sages, in their simplicity, we often find them looking so humble, but they're not complicated in their approach. It's simpler and simpler, more and more innocence, and a deepening love, and a deepening faith in God. So how does that unfold? How do we become simpler? So, by exercising our mind and intellect more and more, in which direction do we feel we will go? Towards more simplicity or less simplicity? No, isn't it?
You cannot comprehend.
So, firstly, the byproducts of that process are immediately visible because our mind claims to be a very important instrument, but if you give it more than one or two variables, it starts to fall apart. So, we can't handle more than a little bit of information, but it never says this is beyond me. You see? But you notice the symptom immediately, that is in the form of worry and anxiety. So you start to get worried when you're overburdening yourself. That you're burdening the limited instrument with too much of a task, too much of a job. So we must let go of that. And a simple way of letting go of that is to hand all of it over to God. Instead of exercising your own mind intellect, we know that there is a higher power. There is that which is beyond this realm, the supernatural being, that is God Himself, is here to help you. So why do you have to exert so much pressure onto yourself? So this itself can be the end of complication, the end of worry, the end of anxiety. Now as you let go of every strand, what is your problem today? Everybody has one? Mostly. Everybody has one or two. So those problems exist where? In the mind. And in the mind they exist as what? As strands of thinking, isn't it? You're just repetitively thinking about a particular topic, and that is bothering you. Now, if you had to plan a wedding all by yourself, seems like a very complicated project, very difficult. But then you come across the best wedding planner in the world and they're doing the job for you for free. Then you'll be intelligent to hand it over to them, isn't it? But to still give it to the best wedding planner in the world and still be stressed about it would be silly, isn't it? Would be ignorance. It would be a lack of trust and faith in the one that you've given the job to. So either we don't have faith that the one who lives in our heart is actually the king of the universe and he actually loves us and he has time for us and he can basically do whatever is his will, nothing can ever stop him. So if we trust the sages' words, the saints who have told us that actually our life can be surrendered to them, then we don't have to take any of that load onto ourselves. We can hand it over to them. We can hand it over to Him. Just like all the planning, all the resolution that we may be trying to do in our heads right now is best handed over to God. So, if there are 5 repetitive strands of thinking that you're thinking about, one by one, if you just hand it over to God, is that leading to more simplicity or less simplicity? More. Just checking if anybody is hearing what I'm saying. So that leads to more simplicity because our life is getting uncomplicated. This is handed over to God, this is also handed over to God, this is handed over to God. So as we return to that simplicity more and more, that is going to have an outpouring, a natural, usually a natural expression when it interacts with the world as well. What will happen more and more? As you engage with the world, what will change as you increase in simplicity? The mind is less cluttered, less complicated. How will your life change as an outpouring of that inner grace? It is different, more kindness, compassion, lesser anger, lesser resentment, lesser guilt, lesser pride. All of these things are natural to happen. So this unfolding of all of this is to make space for God in the form of the temple in your heart. As you empty yourself from mental sense making, conclusion making, you will find that the truth about who you are seems more and more natural, and you recognize also more and more that I am, I am, that holy presence, which I can call my being, is not of this world, it is out of this world. In fact, the world is made up of it. You see, so all these insights only truly come when we are getting more and more innocent. And then in the light of the recognition that I am, it shines a light on that which is completely beyond the realm of perception, the realm of attributes. So you go to Nirguna Brahman, you recognize that. So whether you look at true self-realization, self-recognition, or the pathway of love, or bhakti, or devotion, for either of these we have to let go of these constructs which make up the nature of our individuality in the form of belief systems, in the form of conditions, what Bhagavan called vasanas. So this is what fundamentally we are in the process of unburdening ourselves from this mental prison, freeing ourselves from this mental prison and learning the texture of a completely new life, which is a heartfelt life, a life lived in the heart actually. Even to call it heartfelt will be too limiting. We go from the way of the head to the way of the heart. Now we have to be very careful that our mind has an idea about the way of the heart. It thinks it knows. How should I live? What should I do? How can I be truthful? How can I be spiritual? So, true innocence is to let go of all of these ideas as well and really be available fully to follow God's will moment to moment. Yeah? So when we are empty, true insight can come. When you are empty, the sages have made a promise to us saying that when we are empty of this me, then God walks on that road. The lane is too narrow for both God and me. But if I'm empty of me, then God walks on this road. What is the meaning of God walks? That then God is running my life, that God is working in my heart to deepen the bond of love. And that deepening deepens more and more and more till it comes to the recognition of oneness and a union or the absence of a distance, an apparent distance. So, as we have become more and more innocent, as we are becoming more and more innocent, we are then blessed by the guidance of a greater power, which is God's presence itself, which is also called the Atma or the Holy Spirit. So, in our simplicity, it is not a dumbness that we come to, it's not a stupidity. Our simplicity is not a stupidity. Our simplicity leads to a wisdom which is beyond compare, because that wisdom actually comes from God's presence, from the Atma within. So, as we simplify our mind and intellect, we learn to live a life of great wisdom and knowledge without any pride, because it is so apparent to us that this wisdom, this knowledge comes from a higher place, from a higher source than any individual could ever have produced. So how can we live like this? That has to be the question then, isn't it? That, yes, I agree with you, hopefully, conceptually, I agree with you. But when it comes to life, when it comes to day-to-day struggles of life, then it seems impossible to live like that, isn't it? So how can we make it from a theory class to a workshop, to a practical session? So it would be too limiting if God had said that only this one pathway leads to me. Yeah? So we will discuss some things, but don't be under the impression that this is the only pathway to God. There are millions of pathways. Maybe for each of us there's a different pathway to God. You see? But the broad strokes of that pathway we can talk about, and each of you will, under the guidance of the Atma, lead a path which will be quite distinct from everybody else. But we'll try to paint some broad pictures which more or less rely on scripture and the words of the sages, so that we are not fooling ourselves and falling in the wrong traps. So what is golden is empty, isn't it? Empty is gold because empty of what? Empty of me. And empty of me is when God takes over. So empty. But empty just, and I've tried this actually for a few years, but just by pointing to empty constantly, doesn't have the necessarily the impact that is needed. Because to be empty of the empty becomes a challenge. So, like the empty from the idea of being empty, like I am being empty, I am open, I am empty, that restricts our openness, our emptiness, and that becomes a new framework for pride to be built. But if that path really resonates with you in your heart, of course, just be open and empty. That's all. What is very important in this process is to be honest with ourselves. If you find that in spite of your intention being to be open and empty, it's not being applied because Maya is so strong that in spite of our best intentions and strongest ideas of being empty, it pulls you into pride, anger, resentment, grievances, struggles, all of this, all the complication that we were talking about. Then we can look at some intermediate steps between being full of ourselves and being completely empty of ourselves. So, in our way of satsang, usually traditionally the two paths which have been suggested are the path of inquiry and the path of surrender. You see how it works? What are they for? If you inquire into the nature of who you are, you cannot use your mind to solve it. Like you may think and think and think, but you will never get to the true insight about who you are. You may come to a conceptual answer, but a conceptual answer is not true insight. You see? So that your mental strategies, your mind intellect cannot help you with who you are. So you have to turn to a higher place for that answer. You realize that your intellect cannot solve it for you, and you then become helpless in your mind intellect and let go of your reliance on it. And in that letting go, you're introduced to the higher power of the Atma within, which shows you the reality of who you are. So that is one way to come to the simplicity. Another way is that whatever strands that we talked about, just keep handing them over to God. Nothing complicated. Asking who am I is also very simple. There is nothing complicated. Everything is very simple. If it is becoming complicated, then we are inserting our mind too much into it. Okay, so let's go slowly. So, what is the simplicity of self-inquiry? Most people think it's a very, very difficult, only for spiritual superstars, very, very difficult process, which is self-inquiry, because it is called Jnana Yoga. Jnana Yoga itself sounds intimidating and scary. But all you're doing in self-inquiry is sincerely asking, who am I? Who am I? Then the mind presents an answer to you, and you say, who witnesses that thought? for all perception, for all conclusions, instead of latching on to the perception or the conclusion, we just turn to the question, who am I? Who witnesses this? Who is aware of this? So the process is extremely simple, and the insight is simpler beyond any words can grasp. So this is the first simple way. The second simple way is the path of surrender. Means everything that the mind says to you, say, I'm bringing it to God. Yeah? So from here to here. So the mind says, what is going to happen to you? I'm bringing it to God. The mind says, oh, what are you going to do about this? Say, I'm waiting for God to show me. So everything becomes about God rather than about you. You become the priest or the sidekick in the story at best, and not the star of the movie anymore. Right? Are you willing to be the sidekick in the movie of your life? That's all it takes. If you can make God the star, and like a good sidekick, allow him to control the narrative fully, then that is the path of surrender. So how is it practically? Something comes, somebody says blah 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 blah, okay? And your mind is saying in response, like that. So just build the experience to, before buying into the mind's narrative, pause, take it to God. How to take it to God? Say, God, this is it. There's nothing complicated. He knows everything. So you don't have to do anything to take it to God. Just your intention to take it to God is to take it to God. So whatever is bothering you today, say, God, this topic is really upsetting me today. I feel uncentered, I feel confused. Please help me with this. And whichever aspect of God resonates with you, Ram, Krishna, Jesus, Allah, whatever word, God knows that your intention is to go to Him. Our primitive methods will never be impressive to God anyway. So whichever way, but strangely you will notice that most things we don't take to God. Why do you feel that is? We feel like we can solve it, and secondly we feel that he is not actually here. He doesn't actually hear me. All these things are good for satsang time, but come, let's get real. Huh? So be careful of this false real, which is the opposite of reality, which makes you believe that God is not here, that God does not love you, He does not care about you, and the silliest idea could be that He can't do anything about it, I have to do this. Or another silly one is that this is not important enough to take to God. You see, because we are replacing worldly hierarchical ideas and using them with God, that how can I take this he will say, this is so small. It's not like that. He wants us to follow his will every moment, and whenever we are confused about it, he is available to guide us in it. So everything can be taken to God. So the difficulty is in sacrificing what I want and to wait for what he wants. And that is what? That is pride. So you can imagine two competing wills. That is our life, isn't it? Two competing wills. You see? Now, that my will could be in competition with God's will itself is sheer silliness, and that silliness itself is pride. Is it not? So, that idea that I don't have to wait for God, I don't have to turn to God, I don't want to wait for His will, because I know in this case what everything means, and I know what to do. In this case, what I have to do. So, I hope you're seeing the interlinkages in everything that I'm saying. If we're too full of ourselves, we can never wait for God's will. You see? So the more simpler we are, the more patient we are, the more faithful we are, the more humble we are, we will make ourselves available to follow God's will. So if the idea that He is sitting in the same room with you, if that helps you, use that. Krishna is sitting with you in your room. This problem comes, say, what do I do? Wait for Him to respond. Have faith in God's response. What is the boundary of our faith? Oh, I took it to God, but see, nothing happened. After how much time? After how much time? When is the right time to leave God's will and go to my will? What is the right time? Never is the right time. Yet we will do it a lot of times. I do it a lot of times. That is the compelling nature of Maya, to use our idea of what we want, my will, my pride, to get between me and God, or to prevent the dissolution of the me into God. So, so then Pankaj told us the other day, and I noticed on Garima's table also I've been working, that two things are very important: faith and patience. And patience is also called saburi. I didn't know that. And maybe it makes a lot of sense because maybe the best example we have of patience is Ma Shabri. So this saburi sounds very similar to Ma Shabri. So if you can have 1/millionth of the patience that she had, 1/millionth of the faith that she had, then we see that, huh? Are you calling her saburi? Okay, maybe it's something. So, so I saw on your desk, Garima's desk, that somebody's gifted you something from Shirdi Sai Baba. The two messages over there are faith and patience. So, how much patience do we need to have? As much as possible, as much as we can muster up, and as we learn to muster up more and more and more, we become better at being more and more patient. We cannot be impatient about following God's will. So I had a problem, I brought it to God, God was silent as usual, so I went my own way. That cannot be it. It's better than nothing, but still, that can't be it. So you say, I have this problem. I come to God with the innocence of a child, not as option A, because I have no other alternative, but to bring it to God. And the beauty of what unfolds in that patience is something that all of us must experience, because it is a deepening of humility, it is a deepening of faith, it is a deepening of love. So don't allow your mind to convince you that, oh, this is so difficult, it's so terrible, I can't do it. It will come with all of that. Have the patience, 1/1,000,000th of Ma Shabri. Both in your inquiry and in your surrender. Because it's a rare one who also does the inquiry and who am I? Pure awareness. And even if that insight comes, very quick the mind wants to grab a hold of it, make claims of enlightenment, start announcing satsang, start gathering people. It wants to be impatient with all of those things. So don't fall into those traps, either with your inquiry or your surrender. And we don't have to pick. Even for whether inquiry or surrender, we can leave that to God's will. We don't have to label ourselves a Jnani or Bhakta. God will has no use for that label. So don't restrict yourself. Allow God's will to determine even that flow of your life. So in the process of inquiring, in the process of surrendering, all the other qualities that need to be developed within ourselves will happen naturally. So you realize that patience needs to happen. Now, can patience happen without humility? If somebody is very proud, can they be patient? No, they just can't be. They'll be too full of themselves and pride and rushing to be patient. Their own idea of what they know will be too compelling for them to wait for God to guide them. So another way of saying patience is to just don't rush.
I'm not trying to rush. And the mind doesn't stop, it's still going on with its proposals. Then you feel that you're just fighting this mind all the time. I mean, it's just getting me out. It's on. This non-stop nonsense proposal, and we just waiting.
Something very interesting to look at on this topic is that I feel like the mind is the king of haste.
Yeah.
And God is the king of speed. Because we say God speed. We don't say mind speed to anyone. We say God speed. Why do we say Godspeed? So know that if you're being mental about it, it gives you the illusion of speed, but it's actually just haste. It's that whole thing I was sharing last time about displacement versus distance. So we may go up and down, but not have moved from where we were. But nothing can move compared to God's speed. You see, so trust that all true progress, if there is such a thing, then that has to come from God's grace. You can apply yourself mentally and it won't happen. That is what Nanak said. All the siyapas we can do, all the smartness, these things we can apply, but unless we follow God's will, nothing will happen. So the key construct of the way of the heart is this patience, humility, patience, faith. Without faith, you can't be patient. So I feel like patience at the center is a very good thing to deepen in all that which is needed in this pathway to God. And what is the struggle I've seen with most of you in the last few years? Oh, I rushed. I just rushed. I didn't wait for God. I just rushed. And all of us have seen that quite a few times. And that rushing actually doesn't help us save any time. One beautiful thing I read today. So this teacher, he said that one of the things we have to be careful about is our idea of perfect. That we want to do everything A plus, but sometimes in God's will we may have to settle for C plus because your time and attention may be needed in something else that God wants you to do. That was a very strong statement here as well, because all of us who've been at work and things like that feel like that we must be full rah A plus about everything that happens. But it's absolutely true that God may want something which is actually not that important. He's okay with C plus on that. But we have to become perfect at following His will, not our own idea of projects. So like an innocent child, to allow everything to run on God's power instead of involving my idea, but in actuality non-existent power into the equation is what is needed. So, go ahead, go ahead. I was just saying that when life throws something at you, Maya throws you a curveball, then what are you going to do? Just to make sure you're getting a sense of what I'm saying. So something happened today, you woke up and you opened your phone, you didn't take my advice of waiting for God's presence before engaging with the world, you got into it. Even if you did, suppose that you came to God's presence, all of that, and then you opened your phone and some disaster is waiting for you. Now, yeah, pause, give it to God, or inquire into who is getting affected by this, who is perceiving all of this. Then, so you will give it to God. For how long? Boss is waiting for answer. Angry messages come. Or client escalation has happened. Something has happened. So then give it to God, but God doesn't, your boss is not going to accept that you're waiting for God. Then what to do? Then let's keep all this satsang stuff aside. Let's get real. Is it like that? That's a question of faith. No. Leave it to God and forget about your best. Our dharma is to do your best in following God. Getting it? Not I will do best according to my means first, and by then I'm too embroiled in all of that to come to a point of leaving it to God. And then what happens? Okay, I do my best. And then if things work out anyway, then I am there to take credit. Then where is God remembered? And if things go into a deeper mess, then I'm thinking, I can still make this work. Let me do this. Let me call this one. You see? So we spend so much time away from God in the idea of doing our best. So let's do our best to follow God. Okay, so we have to do our best. Let's say I agree with that. What is the most important project in our life? Follow God's will. So come what may, come whatever else, we have to do our best to follow God's will. I'm not suggesting at all to not do anything. I'm just saying that only do what comes from God. You see, but there may be this sense that, this fear that if I just leave it to God, like God will not do anything, or God will be too slow to respond, or I may not get an answer. And that is why faith is needed. If God was an instant, if God, is it a question of God's capability to be instant in His response, or is it a question of love for us, or is time for us? What is the question about? When we ask, usually, that is why I've given those 4 points. What stops God from responding instantly?
I'm not worthy. I'm not yet worthy enough to receive this.
So God has said that? So God, then we don't buy into that conclusion. That is a question of my worthiness. Because if I'm worthy enough for Him to be aware of me, for me to still exist, my existence depends on Him. No? If I was not worthy, why would I exist?
I'm not yet that where He is talking to me.
Yeah, so in another way of saying that, it's similar to what I was going to say. So if you're going to put a simple construct on it, I would put the construct that it is not his ability which prevents him from responding instantly in this moment. He is trying to teach me something. He's trying to deepen my faith. He's trying to show me that if I remain faithful and humble and patient, His grace will take care of things, and again take care of things according to His will and not my mind, not my way. So it's not a problem solving engine, it's not a genie. He is God.
It's also an attachment which makes you want to do your
An attachment to the outcome.
Yeah, you want that and then you just want it and then you don't looking for God to be yes, no, not that.
An attachment to even ideas of what people will think of me, what is going to happen to my image. My boss will think that I'm not worthy, I'm not a good worker. Or whatever the situation may be. So I'm not at all saying don't do anything. But there's a difference. That's why I made the difference between haste and speed. What is the difference?
What I wanted to ask you, what is the king of speed? So I just wanted to ask about this.
Yeah. So we say Godspeed. May God be with you. So we're wishing that may His will unfold. Like who could be faster than the one who has created this universe? Jehi Shrishti Upai Tripida Banai Sangha Sahaya Na Duja. Unassisted by anybody else. He has created these universes and universes. And so why would He be slow?
It's a beautiful contradiction somehow, because he's also king of patience.
Yeah. So that is why that whole point about haste versus speed, displacement versus distance. We look back at our life and we say that the most important things have happened by His grace, isn't it? When we look back, we see that, oh, I was trying this. Then one day I just happened to be there and it unfolded like that, isn't it? So when we look back at the past, we're able to see these things in action, that without God's grace, we would be fully lost in our lives. So when we say speed in this context, can we say that really the most important things happening for us at the right time, you see, versus us splashing about, thrashing about, and things not unfolding the way we want necessarily. It's a good contemplation to see. That is grace a mechanism of slowness? Because this is what our mind fights us with. It makes us rush because of this. That is grace unaware of because God is timeless. He's like, okay, it's okay. They wait another 3 years to find the best relationship. It's okay. Is it like that? Yeah.
Don't you come to know when God does something? When we come to know when we are studying,
Yeah.
when it actually happens to inside, like the speed when you are saying, it's too fast
It's
for
too
us
fast.
to understand what just happened. So we post that to
Exactly. Absolutely. That His grace is so even difficult to recognize because we're so caught up in ourselves that later we look at it and say, oh, how did that happen? I just saw one YouTube video and my life changed. You see? I just had a meeting with a friend the other day and he said, have you heard this or have you been to this teacher? And our life can change. We don't realize. So don't allow the mind to rush you, come what may.
Listening to instruction and following and just letting him just move you both at the same way.
Yeah. So what is the safest way in which you know that you're living in God's will? Shall we put it like that? That I know that I'm in God's will. I don't know whether I'm actually listening to His instruction, whether He is moving me or I am moving myself. Too complicated, let's say. So just remain present to His presence. As long as you're present to His presence, He is moving you. So आप भगवान के साथ रहो. अगर आप उसके साथ हो तो सब ठीक है. Getting it? If you're with God, your job is to be with God. And if the Jnana path is more compelling for you, more attractive for you, then your job is not to fall into any false identification. Don't pick up the me. Then know that what is unfolding is God's will. As you learn to remain in His presence, then the subtle signatures of His way of communicating also become more and more apparent to us. Not that He can't communicate in stronger ways. When there's been time, He has sent different ways of communication also to whoever needed to be communicated with. Not that it's again not a restriction on His ability. It's again a question of how He wants us to become. He wants us to become softer in our hearts so that we can listen to our heart compass more clearly. Yeah. No topic is trivial for God, yes. Everything can be taken to God. Everything. He's got an infinite amount of time for us. Therefore, so imagine that you had a relationship with a child and you loved them more than anything else. You had no restriction of time. You were aware of everything the child was thinking, feeling, intending, doing, everything. And what is the fourth? And you have no restriction on your ability. Then what do the child have to worry about? Nothing at all. And because in our misidentification we misidentify who we are and what we are, we also find it very difficult to understand that this is the way that God is. You see? So our first lack of faith is that we forget that He is. So there were many weeks in Satsang where I was just, but God is here. And God is here. God is here. And that itself may be more than enough instruction actually. Right? So we forget that He is. Then we forget that He is, but we may feel like He doesn't know. I have to dial a special hotline. It starts with some mantra japa, which is all good, we must do it. But it is all for ourselves, to bring us to that communion, to make us empty in our heads more and more. He doesn't need a special process of communication for us to communicate with Him. He is aware of every single thing. So He is aware. He loves us more than any love that we can fathom. How will you know this? Maybe He's just an indifferent God. How do you know He loves you more than anything? Because Master has said, so yes, that's one, to have faith in what the sages have told us, that's very good. But we can't really know till we allow ourselves to deepen in our heart. And the more you deepen in your heart, you will see that this pristine love that is here, it comes from Him. So if this beautiful love that I taste comes from Him, what is He made up of? How much love does He have? You see, so you start to taste it more and more. So then the faith in the Master's words deepens more and more because you start to taste it for yourself. You see? Otherwise, they just remain as words. As much as we may try to believe them, it doesn't become faith until intuitively we start to taste all of this for ourselves. You see, until then, we must just have faith in the Master's words. It's completely fine. So, this deep love and all that is good, He is the source of, and we see that so clearly in our heart. Then how do you know that He has infinite amount of time for me? Again, the Masters told us, but more, all of this is intuitive. No? You get a more and more intuitive sense of all of this. That He is not restricted by time. If He is aware of my every move, infinitely He is aware of myself. And because, if you want to be fancy about it, we can say because I'm indistinct from Him ultimately anyway. But my idea is to not be fancy. So, and the last doubt can be the idea that even God can't help with this. This is beyond even God, which is sheer stupidity. Maybe we say it in frustration or in humor or something like that, but it is just not true. That is why in the words of prayers, artis, all of this is inserted over there to remind us that He is the all-powerful. The point of inserting those lines is to remind us that you are the one who has made this universe unassisted just by the power of your being. You didn't even have to move an inch or take any effort. Just by the power of your being, these universes come to light. Just the power of your intention, just the power of your will, all this drama which seems so big comes to light. So you are the all-powerful one. It is to remind us. He doesn't need to be reminded about the fact that He is there. Although if you notice in some prayers, it is a tradition to remind God of His mercy, His kindness, His love. It's worth a try.
Father,
Yes.
if I feel like God can't handle something, it goes back to what you said about having the not understanding what God is,
Yeah.
having the misunderstanding of who God really is in everything. And the other issue could be expectation, like a personal expectation of how it should be, are really the only two ways to feel like God can't handle something.
Yes, that's a very good point actually. That if you are all-knowing, all-loving, all-pervasive, infinite time and all-powerful, then why aren't you doing what I'm asking you to do? Isn't it? That I'm telling you that this is what is needed. Why aren't you just doing it? What is stopping you?
Exactly.
So, in that all-knowing, we have to also include the Supreme Intelligence, the only one who truly knows. So, if we forget that, then we can have this kind of idea, and it's very common, all of us can have it, that if you all of these things, then what is getting in your way? Don't you see that this is what is needed?
Yeah, I suppose that's where faith comes in, because of knowing that we can't know. We can't know everything.
That's a very
He's not obligated to let us know.
yeah. And in borrowing the words of a famous scientist, Neil deGrasse Tyson, he said, "The universe is no obligation to make sense to you."
Yeah.
So the Lord of the universe is definitely no obligation to make sense to us. Like the sun has no obligation to make sense to a caterpillar. We just
We probably couldn't understand even if he tried to
exactly,
tell us.
exactly. And we just understood that we can't understand. I feel like most of the suffering in our life is over.
That's a good one.
Just that understanding is enough.
Yeah.
That's a very good point. That there is nobody who knows better.
Thank you.
So in the knowing of everything, it is also the supreme intelligence.
Yes.
Right?
Thank you.
That's it. Did you try that? Good luck, Sam.
Been out for a while, Father, from Satsang, and it's always a good time to kind of be away and contemplate
Yeah.
and see if things are actually getting absorbed. And so, last few weeks have been, generally speaking, very good in terms of the external world and everything, and no mental chatter, just because of circumstance. So can't take any credit for that in a sense. But then what was happening is like, oh, am I living with God? Have I forgotten God? But I couldn't answer that question because, well, I could, and I don't know if it's sufficient. That maybe that's what my question is. And how should one approach um, this question of am I living in God when everything is sometimes going well?
Yeah.
And so the only checkpoint I was able to answer was, like you say, or Anand Mahima says, Maya is May Aya. So I could see that that wasn't happening.
Yeah.
Everywhere it was very light. There was no me in anything, in any kind of serious way. But then there was no active engagement with God in a sense that when things are not well, it's easy to identify that I'm taking refuge in God.
Yes.
Right? So then it's very easy for me to say, oh yeah, I am with God, and because there's a lot of suffering. But when there's not, it's very hard for me to say, am I living in God?
Yes.
The only other thing I would say is, was I doing my ADS? I was doing it with full gusto and immersion and everything. And is there anything else?
Not really.
Okay.
That's good enough. Our heart knows.
Yeah.
We know inwardly.
I guess it felt a little like guilty in a way that, oh, because now things are good, I'm not taking refuge as much. But then it was like, well, everything is okay and Maya is not happening, Maya is not happening, so I don't know what else to do.
Just we use that sense of connection or disconnection in our heart usually as a compass to guide us in terms of, and soon it doesn't become for anything else, just the sense of being connected with him independently of how it may be unfolding in the world or not. You see, like in a way it becomes our only source of uh, contentment or discontentment. That restlessness of being disconnected from God and the reassurance and the contentment of being in the Father's lap or not. It's just that itself becomes an end in itself. Then we don't need to worry about any of the byproducts.
The other thing that was happening constantly is whenever there were these, let's call them beautiful moments,
Yeah.
beautiful sunsets, beautiful meal, uh, lovely time with friends, family, whoever, a lot of gratitude was just naturally coming, and that thankfulness was coming to God. And so that was the extent of it. Yeah.
All is good. ये परेशान लग रहे थे दोनों. The beauty of surrendering everything to God is also that we don't become too rough with ourselves. We don't become too hard on ourselves and, oh, what this, like that, you see? Because that's another mind trick to keep us away from God. It can be this like despair or guilt or despondency. So if you notice that you're feeling disconnected in the heart, just offer yourself fully to God, say to Him that I am yours. And just make yourself fully available for Him to help you. I don't feel like there's ever a time where God doesn't want to help us. Is it? The question then can be that then why doesn't God help me in spite of my will, in spite of my stubbornness? And the answer is He does. He does, but also He wants us to grow and to learn. The child goes to play in the garden, in the park, and the parents keep calling them back. All of us who are parents at least have this experience, or as children we've done this with our parents, so we all have this experience. So the parents keep calling us back, and we say, no, 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 ma, another half an hour, I'm coming, 10 minutes, 10 minutes. That 10 minutes becomes 1 hour, the parent keeps calling us back. You see? So a parent has to modulate between how much freedom and how much control for the child to grow, isn't it? It's very nuanced actually, and the brutish nature of the mind cannot really gather the nuance of Like even questions of free will versus God's will, we can't really fathom in our intellect. Like the idea of a forced love, that if God wanted, He would just make us turn towards Him, then what could stop Him doing that? But what is the value in that? Yeah? Like there are these villainous parents in movies, no? Who force their kids to behave this way and this way and this way. And they look all pristine, but it's hollow. Yeah? So like, what is that movie? The kids in the beginning of Sound of Music. All pristine, like everything regimented, perfect. Looks perfect, but the there was love also. The children and the parent, the father, there was love on both sides, but something was missing. Those actions were not coming from love; they were coming more from the rule that it has to be this way. So there is much more joy in allowing the children some freedom to roam free, and then see if they turn towards us. That is why don't keep waiting that God has to call me, God has to call me, God has to call me. All parents are always calling their children. There is no confusion about that. Do we turn is the question. And if you don't like the parental construct, then you can have God can be your beloved. Any construct that you can fathom. If you don't like the beloved construct or the parent construct, he can be your best friend. He has not set any boundaries to how we must relate with him. There's so much to learn from the simple stories. Like, how did Sudamaji go and meet Lord Krishna? What was his approach? Yeah. Simplicity, humility, love, not expecting. Great joy that God even recognized him. Isn't it? Was he entitled? Was he saying, why haven't you? I have been praying to you. You are not responding. That. You see? How did Ma Shabri meet Ramji when he came finally? I have been waiting so many years. Like that. So let's not miss the simple messages in these stories. They are much more helpful. Isn't it like that? That sometimes we just take these things for granted, or we just don't really use them to learn. Did she bring out her list of lamentation? Say, I gave up on my moksha for you. I gave up on my life. I'm an old woman. I'm not able to do anything else now. Spent my whole life waiting for you. You see, why you took so long to come? There is space for some of that tantrum, some in that love. Like especially if you have like a motherly relationship with God or a fatherly relationship with God, maybe. But you have to be very careful with those things. You should not get into any entitlement or pride or any of that. If a childlike innocence is there, then God understands.
Father, can I join on the?
Yes, Mary. We're just making it open now that we're going to be as if the Zoom is part of the group here as well. So we'll just be here.
Okay, thank you. Because when you were speaking, there was so many things coming, wanting to just flow with you a bit on this. And it might be what you said about this own idea of what one knows that is too compelling. I think that strikes exactly something very important, actually. Yeah, and
just know that all of these things come from my own experience in life, that I have done all of these things. That's why I'm able to share about them.
yeah, but it's when that still there's some compelling thing to say something, although the deeper part, it's clear that it doesn't want to say anything, and it's just it's not even silent, it's beyond speaking or silence. I found also with Guruji, because a lot of times I could feel this, wanting to say something on a subject, or that sometimes would have sounded maybe a bit contradicting, but it was just and then I didn't speak, but then it's still there. It kind of travels with you. It doesn't just, if you don't speak it out, so you can't say maybe 10 times you don't speak and 1 time you speak or something like this. I don't know. And when you were sharing about this subject is very alive, no, for us, this following God's will.
Yeah.
And staying as close as possible with God's will. And you said something like, for one who is more attracted to jnana, if he sees that there's no such no such agent, no such individual separate, then that is dissolved back, and then whatever happens, it's God's will. And I feel it's the first time I'm actually really feeling the truth of that, like more, it's coming more into, it comes to that ultimately.
Yeah.
And then when the agency gets taken seriously enough, then the best is to try to stay as close or as much with God as possible. But I don't know, I wanted to also hear you on this a bit, if something is.
No, that's precisely what I'm saying. That's exactly what, that if there is a deep sense of an idea for me, then best to try and remain as close to him as possible in the form of our surrender, in the form of saying, I don't know anything, only you have to guide me, you have to move me, and let me not decide on my own terms. Let me lead this life moment to moment on your terms. So, like that, in a simple prayer, in a simple communication with integrity, we offer our heart to God more and more, make ourselves available to Him. And in the same way, if our path is more inquiry oriented, jnana oriented, we just look at who is that one, who is the doer, who is the experiencer, who am I? And this false sense of pride, false sense of knowing something gets dissolved in that process. So when the false knowing dissolves, either through the process of surrendering it to God, being uninterested because we hand it over to God, or through our looking, through our insight, that is when the Atma's guidance, that is when the Holy Spirit can guide us in a very simple way, and we make ourselves available for heart guidance, for heart movement. So,
Mm.
so in a way, the method of coming to that innocence, that emptiness, that simplicity is not the most important thing.
Mm. Mm.
It's because we hand over to God's presence, the Atma within. That is the important thing.
And it can be both, no? Like it can be both.
Can we
Both
go?
surrender, both insight, like you say. Both prayer, both insight, and it's so beautiful.
Yes, and best is not to conclude that this is my way, this is not my way.
Mm.
Make
Mm.
ourselves open, because sometimes a heart will guide us to inquire, and sometimes a heart will guide us to just love God or to surrender to God. So
Mm.
it's best if we don't become too hard with the boxes that we make about ourselves. That I am this way, my path is this. Like we don't know, and usually if we are concluding something too strongly, it is the opposite of what it should be. Usually, we can't automatically presume that. So must not fall into the trap of because my mind is saying left, so I must do right. It's not. That is also not advisable. We just have to come to that neutrality, just keep returning to that neutrality.
Mm. And to take this a bit further, but maybe it already covered that
It's all right.
in your saying that there's no need for a box, but when you speak about God knowing everything, it's very beautiful in the heart way, because you rather say that than it's more close to the heart when to think or to feel that God knows everything, rather than to feel he does and I'm separate and my thing here is just like nobody knows about it. And but somehow in the actual looking and in the actual exploring, what I find is more that God is whatever
Is
seems to be is that thing. So he doesn't know, he is. So then when he's very close to that is, then also knowing nothing but God is there. So in the way it doesn't know anything also. Like,
in a way we can say
but
that.
it's not easy to hear from the personal thing, because the person think there is a God, an actual entity who doesn't know anything about me, but it's more like there is no other thing but God. So in that way, there's nothing to know. He just knows.
The beauty part, and maybe this will help us in contemplating this, that can being and knowing actually be separated in its construct. Like would can there be a being which is independent of a knowing, like it is independent of conceptual knowing? Like let's put it this way, that if I take myself to be like I am the body, then I don't have a conceptual idea of what is the name of, what is the biological name of every finger, of every organ. I may not know conceptually, you see, but in my being, it then if there's something that needs my attention in the body, then
mm,
it is known in that in the being of it. I don't need to add another quality to being. In the same way, in the knowing of it, in God's case, in this holy knowing, in this heart knowing, can there be knowing with the distinction? In the sense, can there be a true knowing if there is separation, if it is not one being?
yeah, yeah,
So,
exactly.
so, uh, so I don't feel. I feel like in God's dictionary, He may not have two different words for being and knowing.
Yes, yes, yes. Yes. And to know something, he knows it through our mind. So to know something objective, he knows it through our thoughts or through our capacity as, but that's already a little bit maybe.
We can explore, but that would mean that the functioning of our thoughts, the functioning of this ability to think, is a separate power than God Himself. Like I feel that all aspects of Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, which is the generative, preservative, and destructive, regenerating aspect of God, are all inherently a part of Him. So I don't feel that there's any need for God, who is sitting beyond time anyway, to wait for a thought to arise in our minds for Him to know. You see, I feel like His knowing is a very different quality. Like we can't actually fathom the all-knowing. Like, what would the all-knowing look like? Would that all-knowing be knowing some things moment to moment, or will that all-knowing be aware of every possibility playing out in consciousness? You see, so at the risk of
The all-knowing would be being that, exactly what you said in the beginning. So that would be the all-knowing, is being everything.
so let's just humor me for a few minutes.
Yes,
Let's really
sorry.
explore. Let's really explore this a little deeper. So, if God is to be God, then God's timeline cannot be linear, because God actually can't have a sort of timeline where there's a past, there's a present, there's a future. And if God is all there is, then that all there is cannot be restricted to only one set of movement. Like, would all there is contain only Ananta's hand in this moment going from here to here? Or would all there is also contain the point where Ananta's hand instead went from here to here to here to here, here to here? Every single thing that could be possibly played out, would that, which is infinity in itself, be restricted to just a particular movement in this seeming linear flow? Or like they say, Krishna lives in the 16th dimension. I feel like, why 16th? He could be in a million dimension also. So already, if we go beyond time in that way, then the whole construct of the movement in time becomes like one object which is in front of me, but I am the infinite one. So all of these objects, which is one movement in time, then there can be an infinite such objects which I can just play around with. I mean, just again putting it very primitively. So every single possibility which appears as a possibility for us, because we seem to be living in this linear mode of time, then that will not be a possibility for him. For him, everything would have the same level of reality. So if Ananta said this or he said that, both would be things which he would know. So I know I promised to make this satsang very simple, so don't worry about this, but just, okay, let me put it very simply. What is the boundary that we are making around God, and what would be the basis that we would know of any such boundary?
So for sure there is infinite possibilities in God, because He is everything. But to actualize one possibility, He has to localize as a finite. He has to appear as something from that subject object perspective, then he can have an experience.
I feel like the difference between a possibility and an actuality only exists for us in this play. I don't feel for God there is any difference between a possibility and an actuality. Because for all there is, what would be that boundary line between a possibility and actuality? Because he is already, remember, all there is. So that then all there is cannot be restricted by something being just a mere possibility for him. If he is all there is, it must exist in him somewhere as what we call an actuality. It's a beautiful contemplation for the one or two of you that may be interested in this kind of contemplation. You see, because I don't feel like the rules that we apply within one aspect of this lila that apply to us in linear seeming time because of the limitation of attention that we have can be applied to God in terms of the difference between what is a possibility and an actuality, or everything in possible in the manifest being possibly unmanifest for him. Okay, let me say that part again. So when the unlimited one plays in manifestation, that manifestation, nothing stops him from being unlimited in the manifest aspect of himself as well. So in that unlimitedness of God's reality, I don't feel like he needs to conserve potential and then only give rise to certain actuality. For my seeing of what unlimited manifestation would be, that every single possibility is actually an actuality for God to play around with.
But things exists already in the same time in
Yes, but remember that he's beyond all of these dimensions, much more than
yes, yes.
we can fathom.
But in a way that's also what I'm saying in terms of that it exists in possibility, in a sense. The possibility in God is actually the actual awareness itself. So it's the actual God itself. In that way, it exists, but it's not yet manifest into me move like seeing this hand, for example. A moment ago was not yet manifested, so it existed, but it existed as awareness, not as a and if I even look now what is true about this subject looking at the hand, if I now maybe it's a bit of emotions are here, but in a more calming down, it's just awareness. So in a way, any certainty can only be said about awareness itself, not about anything manifest. So in that way, things exist in things are possible. It's a bit of it's not quite accurate. That's actually,
It's okay.
yeah, it can be said.
It's fine. It's fine. It's all good. It's all good.
Sorry to get a bit excited about this.
No, it's very good. We can go deeper and deeper into this conversation as we go along. Just see if the the boundaries that we may be using for that which is manifest, which is that manifest Saguna Brahman, the manifest aspect of God itself, whether we are creating a conceptual boundary around it because it is too much to handle otherwise without the boundary that we may have to make about it, like that it has to be as a certain way before it can show up. And that's why I'm saying that in our limited experience of this three-dimensional or four-dimensional reality, we may have to say like that, but see what is the basis for us concluding that the same thing has to apply to God as well. His saguna, his manifest aspect, his manifestation of himself, what would be a restriction which we can place around it, and would that be something which is just so that we can bring an element of understanding to what is happening, or is it truly possible for us to place that boundary around God's manifestation?
Yes, well, I don't feel what I said puts a boundary, but maybe it does. Maybe I don't see it yet. The when it comes to something objective, not like the less accurate one can be or the less certain. In my experience, what I know for certain is the awareness that is always prevailing no matter what. So that if looked deeply into anything, that is found, that pure awareness is found. So more than that, I don't know. This is also a way of putting
It's good.
words to.
You're actually lucky, because I don't know if I can even say that. That I know this for certain. I don't know. I actually don't know. It feels true. It feels true, but feels true intuitively, not as a feeling. But I've become too old to claim certainty over anything. So, what to do?
Mm, mm. I can sense there's like I opened it up with this, the sense of knowing is here, but it's not always here, and this also dissolves back into awareness. So from there, maybe I know this character is arrogant, so rather just be honest about it than trying to hide it, because it's anyway. I think you can see right through any attempt to hide arrogance.
No, not at all.
But yeah, but this claiming of this knowing of awareness, it's not actually like when spoken, it sounds arrogant. So, but yeah, as a seeing is much more beautiful than how I'm speaking it.
Yes. Just you have to be relaxed about this fact. I am not
Yeah.
at all judging your arrogance or any of that. I'm just trying to see if there's any way in which this foolish one can be helpful to any of you children, you brothers and sisters. There's no, like, who am I to judge anyone's arrogance? So myself, I'm trying to work to get rid of mine. So don't have to at all be in any self-censorship or
Thank you.
relax.
It's gonna take a while to relax because maybe it's been a lot of that trying to be someone not arrogant for a long time, and then but basically why I'm engaging also, there's also some love there
Yeah.
to to look at these things and put what I'm seeing, and then see the correction that's happening and all of this. So it's not it's out of love ultimately, I feel.
I have zero doubt about that.
Yes.
Okay, don't worry. Don't worry.
Thank you. Thank you. Love you, Ananta.
Love
Thank
you,
you.
love. Yes.
Father,
Yes. Yes.
I also feel to come up and offer up any arrogance that is creeping in from time to time here. I guess the main it's this: I want more, or I want different, or I don't have enough.
The idea that what I have is not enough.
Yeah, and it's related to the spiritual seeker, I guess, wanting to transcend quicker and wanting more. And there is also question maybe that came up before this satsang today, which is in connection to, I think Ramana Maharshi said that Guru is God, and maybe this inability to transcend the physicality of it.
I didn't get the last part. Guru is God,
and the inability, I guess, to
the
go
inability
beyond
or the
form.
ability?
No, my inability to go,
Mind.
my as in mine,
Yes.
my disability
Yes.
to go
To
beyond form.
the physical form. Yes.
And this is where I
Bhagavan
guess
said, yes, Guru and God is the same. Many sages have said that. And he also said, I have no Guru and no disciples. So then what are we going to do? Beautiful story, that one time Chadwick, Major Chadwick was it? Yeah, Major Chadwick got really upset with him that he has left all of his life and everything and he's living with Bhagwan, and Bhagwan keeps saying that I have no Guru and I have no disciples. So he had a major tantrum saying, then what are we doing here? What are we here for? Is he our Guru or not? Then Bhagwan turned to another disciple and said to him in Tamil, he probably said to translate for him, that ask him if he wants a written contract. So what is he saying? Was he just making it up that I have no Guru or no disciple? Was it true that he is and was the Guru of Chadwick and all of us? Of course. So then what is the reality? Beyond what our intellect can fathom, isn't it? Because it is not possible that such a great sage is lying to us, but it's also true that the truth cannot be encompassed in linear statements. So, coming back to the first part which you mentioned, that God and Guru is the same, it is true that the true Guru is the Atma, is the Sadguru presence within, is the Holy Spirit. You see? So, anytime an outer teacher is truly embodying only that, you see, only that holy presence from within, and I have not come to that point of ever being able to do that, that transparency has to become more and more and more. Then that, who is the true instrument of the Atma itself, that can be revered in that way, in a godly way, but remembering that it is the God presence which is animating the form that we are seeing in front of us, not the form itself. So, yes, the true Guru, which is the Sadguru presence, is God Himself. God's presence is the true Master. That is very, very clear. And in those moments where in a worldly embodiment operates in an unfiltered fashion, keeping all personal pride and wanting to be right and knowledge aside, just speaks as a true holy instrument of God Himself, then in that moment all distinction between Guru and God, it vanishes. But for this foolish man, I've never got rid of myself that much so that anybody should ever consider this one anywhere close to God. Just look at this one as somebody who is making almost full-hearted attempts to be that way and failing most of the time.
Thank you, Father. I don't know why there is lots of crying, maybe because of separation coming. So I'm seeking for your blessing and prayers to overcome whatever has to be overcome. To overcome whatever is to be overcome, or whatever is possible, I guess, in this lifetime. And thank you for this humility and humbleness that you show us.
I don't know whether it's humility. I don't. So please also make this impression that I'm just being humble or something. It's not like that. It's not.
When you said previously that you don't know if it was in the context of pure awareness that I guess is in everything, then you said, oh, I don't know if I can say that's my
I was just
experience.
saying
I don't
that,
remember exactly, but it was very powerful what you said. And
I was just saying something simple, which is that certainty for me seems like a very big word now. When I was younger, I used to be much more certain. But certainty is not something which is a strong point here now.
yeah, and thank you for all your support in every moment.
Welcome. Very good. Very good. So there's one comic book. In that comic book, actually, nothing is moving in time, but it gives the illusion of time because the frames are drawn as if forward movement is happening. You see? Now, when we go through that comic book with our attention, it seems like we navigated that timeline, that much time passed. So if we read a comic book of Superman when he was born till, I don't know, he died because of some kryptonite or something like that, then we were, in the 15 minutes of reading that comic book, it can seem like we went through his entire lifetime. And the same thing happens to us in dreams. I've shared about this dream that my children were going to school. They said bye to me 7:30 in the morning, And then I went back to sleep, slept for half an hour. In that half an hour, I navigated a dream in which almost an entire lifetime passed in regular time. And God's sense of humor is like this, that in that dream, I was getting late by exactly half an hour. You see? So I felt that half an hour really strongly, uh, but the rest of the life also was not in fast movement or anything like that. Then I woke out of that dream. It was 8 o'clock in the morning, but I'd lived many, many, many years in that seeming half an hour. So in that comic book that I visited, all this, because the frames went in that way, all this time had passed. Now, is there any reason that all there is, like God is all there is, would have only one comic book which is available to him and like a zillion comic books which you could potentially make? If God is all powerful and all there is, those zillion comic books would already be there, or infinite number of comic books would already be there. That is the limited point I was making very badly. So maybe this metaphor could be helpful in seeing that. Okay, now that everybody's gone to sleep, we can read the Ramayana.
Anantaji?
Yes, my dear.
Yes. I just feel I don't know exactly what I would be saying, but I have an impression that something is wanting to be said. I don't know how it will come. So it's just about the fact that we are all trying to find the right place in this game, in this game, I want to say. And because I really feel this, like I have this feeling when I listened to you today and to us, how we say there is God and there is me, and where am I and where is God, and where am I in relation to God? And so I just wanted to look at it this way. So God's play is immense and limitless, and in that game, we try to figure out where we stand and how to talk about it and how to make some sense out of it. And so, and when I listen to you and the contemplation, I just see intuitively. So for me, either we take us seriously and then we are lost, and we are directly lost, more or less. We can be more or less experienced, more or less organized in our mind and make sense out of things. But in any way, we are swimming somehow really deeply. And if we don't take us too important or too seriously, then we that means when we are here for God and not for us, then God's love is flowing through us, and with this love, or we can call it also intuition. It is, for me, it is the same actually. It is actually not isolation anymore, and not because the intellect in itself, which we use to talk to each other, is in itself not sufficient, and it will never be sufficient. So I'm really contemplating how much also either my attempt or Sergeant's attempt or your attempt is always out of love to make sense out of the whole, but it will never be sufficient. So but nevertheless, it touches always that love is flowing in this attempt. So for me, that's what I feel today very much. Thank you so much.
Okay. Exactly.
And for me, this is nourishing. This is nourishing because we are swimming in God, you know. But when we just swim, we just push some water aside or below, and but nevertheless you swim, you know. So I a few images. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Very good. Thank you so much. Very good.
Just quickly, I will listen to what you're sharing again, like when the recording comes, because I want to take in all that you said. But just I wanted to say that what you said about everything existing in like in God as an actuality, I resonate with that. If objects are considered, then everything exists at once and in the same time in no dimension out of time. They all are already existing in God, but to see to consider an object, you have to do it from an objective point of view. So that was my own to start to see a multiplicity of objects, the pure unlocalized, formless, dimensionless awareness has to localize as a subject. And then if we consider subjects, multiple subjects, then they all exist at the same time. So there's no limit in that. But I don't know. I wanted just to make this. Thank you.
Let's go to Radhijam ji. You can unmute anytime. Namaste.
राम फादर
राम राम राम।
फादर आप चरणों की विनती थी अगर संभव हो सके
बोलिए।
हम हिंदी बोलने वालों के लिए अगर आपको तकलीफ ना हो तो कोई 10-15 मिनट का प्रोग्राम
हिंदी बोलने वालों के लिए
10-15 मिनट का कोई छोटा सा प्रोग्राम रखें सत्संग में।
अच्छा। हिंदी बोलने वालों के लिए 10-15 मिनट का वी कैन डू समथिंग। कर सकते हैं। तो सत्संग का एक दिन में ऐसा अनाउंस कर सकते हैं कि ये आधा घंटा हिंदी में अनंता की टूटी फूटी जो भी हिंदी है उसमें थोड़ी बातें कर सकते हैं। ठीक है।
Hello, Father.
Hello.
Namaste, Father. Ananta-ji, namaste.
Namaste.
I just thank you for your attention, and I just I don't know what I'm going to say, but I'm just taking this chance to speak. It's been 3 months. My dad passed away, and it's been a very profound insight and experience into many things, and especially because he was not sick, and the way things happened in the last 3 months gave somehow, how to say that, an insight into how much we are not in control completely. That kind of a sense. And my mother came to see my dad in Ludhiana, where he used to live. And first, she had a big accident. The whole auto turned on her.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, and she broke her femur bone.
Oh,
And she's lying in the bed, and then my dad fell off the bed, and then he did not take it seriously. And he just goes to the hospital and he says, I'm just going to show my wrist. And then he never came back.
oh,
So all this and the grief, we are still going through the grief period still. And then giving my dad the bath, according to the Indian Hindu culture, you take the body, and that has been a very, I'm still grieving somewhere very deeply, and just the insight into you can see the mind wanting to know why this happened and why. But somehow you're forced to, somehow the mind cannot understand this at all. So that gives me an insight into something so deeper, that there is that power which we don't understand. So I just took this, I don't have any really thing to say, like in particular, but yeah. And it happens so sudden, because normally you get prepared when someone is sick, then you know they're going to pass away, and it happened just from one day to the next. And there was no time for anything, and just tears and tears. And then, of course, there are insights when you grieve for a family member. Of course, the grief is on very different levels. It's the form which has been lost. And then it reminds us of our form, that this body will go. If you have anything to say, just come here.
full prayers, full blessings, and
Thank you, Ananta.
hope Mom is feeling better now and recovering from her accident. Something is coming to say. I hope you don't misunderstand what I'm saying. It's meant to be helpful. After my father's passing, sometimes I feel like we are closer now. I just feel that we are closer now, without the conditioning of father-son, without the the things that many times happen in relationships where communication can seem so broken and difficult, and you can see both sides struggling to communicate their love to each other. I feel like after he left the body, somehow in a strange way, those conditions, those constrictions are not playing that strongly, and there's more closeness. At times I feel, I don't always remember him, I have to say. In the times that I do, and I feel like there's a sweeter love and a sweeter sense of belongingness and being together now. So I don't know what that says about the human condition, but in this way, may you also feel that he's closer with you and more present with you. May you never feel like he's not there for you now. My full love, full blessings to both.
I just have this when you were speaking this, my heart was feeling so joyous to hear this from your mouth, because in my heart, you are the man of heart for me, and I come to your feet or to your presence to get reminded of my own heart. And when you said this, I feel there's such sweetness, because now he's free from that form and his love is always here. And that one presence, I feel him, that he never has to leave me again. He's always here. And that sweetness is here. But still, it, it's like, I think somewhere Muji Baba has said, we perceive the world as not, the world is as I am. Somewhere he said that. So where at any given moment where we are, if we are in this presence, then we feel the presence, other also becomes that sweet presence. And when I'm attached to my form, and then there's a story to the grieving, and not to judge that, but it's still there. I'm not, I'm not Mr. Awakened, or I'm just the human side.
Very, very.
Yeah.
So sweet.
Yeah.
Very. We don't see the world as it is, we only see the world as I am. Very good. Very good.
But still, it's such a profound, just to in the Indian culture, to such a, my God, I could not have ever imagined to wash my dad's body, and that experience is such a, it was somewhere terrifying, but still so much grief and losing a form, my dad's form, and
I can imagine.
but thank you for your attention, Anantaji,
So much love.
that given me a chance to share this.
Thank you for sharing. Thank you.
In your presence.
Very good. Very good. Should we read the Ramayana for half an hour?
Father, sorry.
Come with
Can I stand?
Yes, yes.
I don't know. I feel what you were sharing from the beginning is exactly for me, but because it's yeah. I don't know. I just feel somehow I just need so much your help. Like yeah. Yeah, days have been somehow, even in my complexion, I am like, my being is so dry. I don't know why. I'm sorry to come up this, but yeah, like I love you. I love all the sangha so much, but somehow I don't know, like yeah, what happened, like, or like most of the days I am just trying to detach from my mind, but not being able to. And
okay, what is the method you're using to try and detach?
I tried most of the time what Guruji says, watching, and now what you shared, like yeah, offering it to you, or just inquiring.
And what happens? The mind is too strong. It's too.
Like normally, it's like sometimes from the morning I wake up to the end, it's like running, and yeah, not feeling not able to stop it.
Yes.
And most of And the worst thing, I don't know if this is true, but I when I try to, as it's like wholeheartedly try to follow God's will, most like even when I'm empty, it's like either like no movement is coming, or like it feels like so many. Even when I start, some objection starts. Like even your guidance, like don't rush. It comes like don't rush. So it's getting to a point like quite a desperateness a little bit.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I think one of the most helpful things probably that I've ever heard is these monks who are talking about Saint John of the Cross. Because all of us, and especially me, can have days in which we are going with our will. It seems like we forget God. So sometimes it's easy to get disheartened about this, but what Saint John said was very, very elevating, very helpful. Because he said that suppose there are days in which the mind is very distracted. In the practice, your mind is very distracted. But in those, when the mind is distracted, maybe in that half an hour, you tried 100 times to come back to God. You see? And you fail. The mind was distracted again. Then you wanted to return back to God's presence, and the mind says, "Oh, what about this? What about this? Something, and that seems interesting and true." So we leave His presence, but then we return. So he said that every time we make the intention to return to God, it is a beautiful act of love. Even if we fail at it, the feeling of succeeding is not up to us. To make that act of love is what is important. So as long as, in spite of all of this, you showed up in satsang, that is an act of love. In spite of all the struggle, you try to return to God's presence, that is an act of love. So I'm very optimistic mostly. So I said, okay, now in one act of love, sometimes I can stay in God's presence for the full 1 hour, 2 hours, whatever time of prayer. You see? Now, is that better than struggling and making 100 acts of love? Who can say which one is better?
Mm-hmm.
I cannot say. So, isn't that so reassuring that in one prayer time, I just remembered his name, and his presence is so clear. It becomes a quiet prayer, it becomes a samadhi. All of those beautiful states can come. But actually, I just turn towards him once. But when my mind is distracted and seems powerful and offering some tempting ideas, I have to turn towards him 100 times. So isn't that beautiful as well?
Mm-hmm.
So then either way, it is beautiful. Either we remain with God and in love, or we, like, if you were not wanting to turn towards God, this would not be a struggle because you would be fully in the mind and unconcerned about God. So at least you are struggling for God, which is an act of love towards God.
Yeah. You sound broke up, Farid. Just for a second.
Don't get disheartened. All this is natural, and great sages have said that they go through these things. Not that I'm saying any of us are great sages, especially this one. I think that if it could happen to all of them, it is natural for it to happen to all of us as well. As long as we're trying to come back to Him, it's all right. My sound is breaking up?
It's a little bit possible to hear, but a little bit, yeah, it's breaking.
So, when I got a sense of what he's saying, it really helped because it can come here also sometimes that, oh, now I'm spending so much time and is so distracted and I'm feeling so disconnected. Not to despair. What is our intention? As long as our intention is to turn towards God, it's all right.
To just keep turning as however I can.
That's it. That's it. However. The method is secondary, like I keep saying. The method is secondary. It doesn't mean that we don't use the methods which our teachers have given us. You see? But intention to be with Him is the most important.
In the sense that I cannot come to his presence, like only like sometimes I feel to emptiness, but
Yeah. Now, can that ever be up to us? That can never be up to us. His presence is always a gift of grace, His gift to us. You see? So it is only what seems under our control, because we are in the human condition and caught up in doership. It seems under our control to have the intention to be with Him and use the methods which our teachers have given us. So that's all we can do, and as long as we are doing that, God knows our intention and what we are doing. So we have to trust Him with the outcome. We can never come into despair about the fact of not coming into His presence, because we may turn towards Him a million times, but His presence may not be apparent, or we may turn towards Him once and His presence may be fully apparent. That is His gift, His grace. And no matter what we do, we cannot never be entitled to His grace. But I'm learning to be happy as long as I keep my eyes on Him. Whether He shows up or not, my intention, my turning is towards my heart. The rest is really not my business.
thank you.
So maybe on the topic of certainty, I can say that one thing I'm certain about is that He is here, and whether He's apparent, whether He's palpable, whether he seems fully disconnected, whether he seems so connected, there is no doubt about the fact that He is here. So as long as I can turn towards Him, then it doesn't matter what outcomes play out. Who knows best? Is this working? Can you all hear me, guys? Who knows best what is the experience that we should have? And when it comes to Him, we can never say that, oh, I did this, I entered the passcode on my phone, it should unlock. There is no such passcode for God. We can try, we can follow what we have learned from the teachers, but there is no guarantee. But faith is to trust that if He's not revealing Himself to me in this way today, then I have to trust that He loves me and this is what I need today. So the whole, like you said, the whole talk about patience, courage, faith, humility, all of that comes into play.
Can we pray for these also?
Of course, we can pray for
Because yeah, that would be the only thing.
anything that you can be troubled about. It's better that instead you pray about.
Thank you.
No, it's not even this that I can say I'm certain, because even here, to turn to God is always an act of faith. Always an act of faith. Hanuman Chalisa.
Shri Guru Charan Saroj Raj Nij Man Mukur Sudhari Rama Nij Man Mukur Sudhari Baranau Raghubar Bimal Jasu Jodhaya Kufal Chari Tulsi Jodhaya Kufal Chari बुद्धिहीन तनु जानिके सुमिरो पवन कुमार रामा सुमिरो पवन कुमार बल बुद्धि विद्या देहु मोहि हरहु कलेश विकार हरहु कलेश विकार जय हनुमान ज्ञान गुण सागर जय कपीस तिहु लोक उजागर रामदूत अतुलित बल धामा अंजनी पुत्र पवन सुत नामा महावीर विक्रम बजरंगी कुमति निवार सुमति के संगी कंचन बरन विराज सुबेसा कानन कुंडल कुंचित केसा हाथ वज्र और ध्वजा विराजे कांधे मूंज जनेऊ साजे शंकर सुवन केसरी नंदन तेज प्रताप महाजगवंदन विद्यावान गुणी अति चातुर राम काज करिबे को आतुर प्रभु चरित्र सुनिबे को रसिया राम लखन सीता मन बसिया सूक्ष्म रूप धरि सियहि दिखावा विकट रूप धरि संकट जरावा भीम रूप धरि असुर संहारे रामचंद्र के काज संहारे लाय संजीवन लखन जियाए श्री रघुवीर हर्षि उर लाए रघुपति कीन्ही बहुत बढ़ाई तुम मम प्रिय भरत ही समभाई सहस बदन तुम रोजस गावे अस कहि श्रीपति कंठ लगावे सनकादिक ब्रह्मादि मुनीसा नारद सारद सहित अहिसा जम कुबेर दिगपाल जहाते कवि कोविद कह सके कहाते तुम उपकार सुग्रीव ही कीन्हा राम मिलाय राजपद दीन्हा तुम्हरो मंत्र विभीषण माना लंकेश्वर भय सब जग जाना जुग सहस्र योजन पर भानु लील्यो ताहि मधुर फल जानु प्रभु मुद्रिका मिली मुख माहि, जलधि लांघि जय अजरज नाही। दुर्गम काज जगत के जेते, सुगम अनुग्रह तुमरे तेते। राम दुआरे तुम रखवारे, होत न आज्ञा बिनु पैसारे। सब सुख लहे तुम्हारी शरण, तुम रक्षक काहू को डरना। आपन तेज समारो आपे, तीनों लोक हाँकते कापे। भूत पिशाच निकट नहीं आवे, महावीर जब नाम सुनावे। नासे रोग हरे सब पीरा, जपत निरंतर हनुमत बीरा। संकट से हनुमान छुड़ावे, मन क्रम वचन ध्यान जो लावे। सब पर राम तपस्वी राजा, तिनके काज सकल तुम साजा। और मनोरथ जो कोई लावे, सोई अमित जीवन फल पावे। चारों जुग परताप तुम्हारा, है प्रसिद्ध जगत उजियारा। साधु संत के तुम रखवारे, असुर निकंदन राम दुलारे। अष्ट सिद्धि नव निधि के दाता, असवर दीन जानकी माता। राम रसायन तुमरे पासा, सदा रहो रघुपति के दासा। तुमरे भजन राम जी को पावे, जन्म जन्म के दुख बिसरावे। अंत काल रघुवरपुर जाय, जहाँ जन्म हरि भक्त कहाय। और देवता चित्तन धरहि, हनुमत से सर्व सुख करहि। संकट कटे मिटे सब पीरा, जो सुमिरे हनुमत बलबीरा। जय 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 हनुमान गोसाई, कृपा करहु गुरुदेव की नाई। जो शत बार पाठ कर कोई, छूटहि बंदी महासुख होई। जो यह पढ़े हनुमान चालीसा, होय सिद्धि साखी गौरीसा। तुलसीदास सदा हरि चेरा, जय नाथ हृदय महाडेरा। पवन तनय संकट हरन, मंगल मूर्ति रूप रामा। मंगल मूर्ति रूप, राम लखन सीता सहित, हृदय बसहु सुरभूप। तुलसी हृदय बसहु सुरभूप।